This is Infants on Thrones.
Listener essay.
Listener essay.
Welcome back to Infants on Thrones. I'm Glenn Ostland, and this is our November 2018 Listener Essay Contest, where you, the listeners, get to say what you want to say, how you want to say it, where you want to say it, and it is more than a privilege that where gets to be here, that we get to host these on Infants on Thrones, where so many of us are all infants, sitting on different kinds of thrones, right? Today's essay comes from Jim, and is titled, A Fly on the Wall. And after you listen, please go to our website and vote for it and provide the author some personal feedback. Winners will be announced in early December. First place gets $200, second place $100, and third place $50. All right, ready, set. All right, go ahead.
Hi, infants. I'm Jim. You may remember me from such listener essays as Is It I? And Priesthood Power. After listening to the smackdown of a manual for creating atheists by Peter Boghossian,
Was, without a doubt, the worst
audiobook
ever.
I was inspired to enter my own sort of street epistemology episode. The following is my first actual substantive conversation about why I left with a believing Mormon. Member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I live in a one-party consent state and recorded the interaction. I have edited out names and applied a level of voice disguise using my rudimentary editing skills to protect identities. The person I'm speaking with is my Elders Quorum president. He's a genuinely nice guy, although we don't see eye to eye on much. The fact that he was willing to engage with me on this topic is testament to his character, in my opinion. Contrary to Boghossian's aim, my purpose in this conversation was not really to change the beliefs of my EQP. I was mainly just seeking to understand and to be understood. The conversation is a long one, but I hope you enjoy it.
So let me tell you what prompted me to reach out.
Yeah.
I can't get you off my brain.
Yeah.
For coming up on 6 months, dude. And I'm finally I'm feeling like I was getting chastised by the Lord, knock it off, reach out. Because this is my style. Friday night, I typically be home, hanging out, whatever, doing nothing. But it was get off your butt and go contact
Jim.
For reals. I wake up and you're in my brain, I take a shower with you.
Jeez.
I go there freaking annoying, real good. So I really wanted to come in. The last time you and I spoke church stuff, how you feel with church stuff, was a good 2-ish, 3-ish years ago in a stewardship interview.
Yeah.
And I've heard from other people in the last handful of months, kind of your thoughts and whatnot, but I don't know, what gets lost in translation or gets messed up. I wanted to hear it from you.
Yeah.
Talk to you about how your feelings towards the church, your thoughts towards the church, your relationship with the church, how that plays out with your family dynamic here, and your family dynamic extended. Just kind of see, wanted to check in, see where we stand.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about it. No one's really even asked me, so
really?
I have no problems talking about it. I'm going to be straightforward and transparent. I have no problem with that.
Perfect. Appreciate it.
So, I don't believe the church is true at all, and that's been something that I've struggled with for a long time. It's not something new.
In a long time, if you and I spoke 3 years ago, was it shortly before that or longer before that?
Before that, I would say probably 2013 is when I really started to have serious doubts and really questioned the church, questioned God, questioned all that.
Mm-hmm.
I think even before that, people always have some level of questions or doubts, and I did too.
Me too.
But I was fully committed to the church. I was true blue of a Mormon, even though you're not supposed to say that word apparently. As you can get, right? I was very committed to the church, but I think that what fundamentally changed for me is one main thing, and then there's dozens of other things, but the main thing I would say is I don't think that the epistemology of reliance on feelings from the Spirit is a good way to know truth. And the reason I don't think that is from my own personal experience with the Spirit. Sometimes it has worked in my life, and sometimes it has not. And I'm not comfortable saying that I trust the feelings of the Spirit when I can't verify that it works. But for a long time, I would say, well, maybe this thing didn't work out because it wasn't the Spirit and I misunderstood. I'm not good at recognizing the Spirit. Or maybe this thing didn't work out because I needed to learn some type of lesson from this, and my limited human understanding is not God's understanding. Like his thoughts are higher than my thoughts. Or this thing, I guess it was either, it could either be A, like I don't recognize the Spirit well, or B, like there's something that I don't understand. Like God wanted to teach me some lesson. Right. And I worked in that framework for a long time. And I trusted the Spirit, and I made a lot of decisions relying on the Spirit, what I thought was the Spirit. But over time, sometimes I would feel the Spirit, sometimes I wouldn't. Sometimes I would get direction, and sometimes I wouldn't. And here's a really clear example of something where it was just how could this possibly be the Spirit, or how can I rely on this? As a missionary, once in a while, I would feel like I got to knock on that door. And I'd go knock on the door, and nobody would be home. It's okay, I maybe misunderstood the Spirit, or maybe they were home, and they saw me, and them seeing me was the thing that they needed, or something. But those are far-fetched.
Yeah,
right? They just weren't home. And so either I'm wrong or the Spirit's wrong, right? It's one of the two. So I always, even though I really tried to rely on the Spirit in my life, I always had I made it a mission to be able to distinguish the Spirit from my own thoughts. And how do I understand what the Spirit is saying, and how do I understand when it's from me, And so I really tried to work at that for a long time. But the more experience I had, the less confident I became with the feelings of the Spirit. And additionally, I also saw that it didn't work institutionally for the church either. So historical things like race in the priesthood, for instance. 2013 was when they published the essay on race in the priesthood on LDS.org. And essentially they said, we were wrong.
Yeah.
And it's so the Spirit didn't work for you either for 150 years? So either God doesn't care enough, or there is no God, or you're not a representative of him. Those are the choices in my mind. You can't have it another way unless God just doesn't care for 150 years. And I just am unwilling to accept that. And so I had a hard time with that. And that's not the only thing. That's just an example. I mean, there's you list off 100 different things where the church did one thing and then did the opposite, or the doctrine was one way and now it's something totally different. And so it's a combination of my personal experience, seeing it also fail with the church institutionally. And then a third parameter that fed into my distrust of feelings for verifying truth was my education. So I was a neuroscience undergrad, and in graduate school I took some psychology type courses, management type psychology courses, where we learned a lot about different biases that we can have, where, you know, confirmation bias, where we only look for evidence to support our position and we don't seek out evidence against our position. If you really want something to be true, you're gonna make it true for yourself.
Right.
There's all sorts of techniques that are repeatable in the lab to get people to make these mistakes.
Tingly feelings, yeah, that you can reproduce with music and tone. And
Yeah, and then there's that's an additional thing, which is the studies on elevation emotion, where the feelings of the spirit are completely repeatable in laboratory settings, and they have nothing to do with verifying truth or error. And additionally, every religion has people who feel strongly about their particular religion.
Right.
And so the fundamental truth claims of Mormonism come down to Moroni 10:3-5. Ask God, He'll reveal it to you by the Holy Spirit, right? And I just don't think that's a good way to know if something is true or not. Because of the evidence in my own life, evidence that I see in the history of the church itself, and from the evidence from scholarship. So I don't believe the church is true for those reasons, you know. And then when you take that out of the equation, like, the church falls apart. There's no the historical issues, which I'm sure you probably know some of them, if not. I don't know what your level of study is on that, but
greater than average.
yeah, like, there's just no way, in my opinion. I think it's an untenable position to argue for the truth claims of the church. And so that's
part of
what
that,
I'm saying.
the historical part. It's untenable.
Which part?
Yeah, I mean, what
I mean,
aspect?
there's dozens of things. Like, for instance, if you want to take the keystone of our religion, the Book of Mormon, it's a 19th century production. It's not literally true, and scholarship outside of the LDS community certainly says that. But in addition, scholarship in the LDS community is now saying that as well, as more and more evidence comes in that there are no Lamanites. That's just an untenable. You can't argue for that. There's no possible evidence for that. So the Book of Mormon just isn't literal or true.
One of my questions to you would be like, explain the book. You know, like you say, explain the Book of Mormon. How can you explain that if it wasn't? You know, if Joseph Smith wasn't being telling the truth, you know, he was taking it from plates, ancient plates. What is it?
How was it generated?
I mean, there's always all these
There's a lot of
stories
theories.
that Sidney Rigdon wrote it, or somebody else wrote it, and they took it and tweaked it.
There's a whole bunch of different theories out there. I tend to think that Joseph was pretty brilliant and made it up. I think he wrote it. But he didn't do it in isolation. I mean, almost a quarter of the Book of Mormon is straight out of the King James Version of the Bible. So there's an influence right there. There's a few other contemporary sources that are themes extremely similar to the Book of Mormon that Joseph would have had access to, so he could have used those. Additionally, you know, we have records from his mother talking about how Joseph was telling stories about the American Indians from the time when he was 10. Like, he had time to, like, build this story up. So I do think Joseph was sort of a religious genius. I think he created it. I think it's a story that he created himself, in my opinion. But I don't know that for sure. Who knows how the Book of Mormon came about? I've heard the other theories, like there's some conspiracy between Sidney Rigdon and Oliver Cowdery and Joseph, and they wrote it together. There's the Spalding manuscript story with the manuscript found, which doesn't actually look like the Book of Mormon all that much. There's a few little similarities, but it's not that similar. But then there's the story about, actually, there's a second manuscript that Solomon Spalding wrote that a bunch of people in this one city testified that it's exactly like the Book of Mormon, but we've never found that one, so that's unverifiable. There's a whole bunch of theories out there. There's the late war, there's the view of the Hebrews, there's multiple attempts to explain where the Book of Mormon came from. I tend to lean towards Joseph.
Single source.
Yeah. I have a hard time believing in conspiracy theories, personally.
Yeah, same. So what's your, I see a church.
Jim's wife.
Still serving in the primary. Where are you going? What's the...
Oh, I don't intend to be an active participant in church. I'll come sometimes.
Be an active or inactive?
Be an active participant.
All right, okay, just make sure.
I can't pretend that...
We wouldn't want you to.
I can't pretend that I believe that the church is true. And, oftentimes I hear the argument, well, the church may not be true, but it's really good. It's good for you, and it's good for morality, and it's a good place to raise a family. As far as the farthest I'll go is I'll say that the church is good for some people at some points in their lives. I think that's probably true. I think for me as a teenager, it was probably a net positive influence on me. But I certainly don't think it's good for everyone at all times. And I can't go and participate and not be believing. It's just not me. I can't do that. So
makes sense. I think I'd do the same way. Where are you at as far as religion in general, existence of God? Is it deeper than Mormonism? Is it just God in general?
Yeah, I don't see much evidence I don't see much reason for a belief in God. I could be open to the existence of God. I kind of wish that there was a God. I personally don't really see much evidence for it, and so I don't really believe in God. But like I said, I leave open the possibility if I came to some other conclusion, I would change my mind. I could have my mind changed on that. I think religion is mostly man-made. I think it's all man-made. I'm not going to try to solve it. I think religion is man-made. I think we created ourselves to try to explain things and give ourselves comfort. Religion has evolved over time, and it's clear to see that sort of evolution. I don't believe that there's much divine about it, but I do think that it's very powerful, and that the community aspects of it are really important. The thing that I will miss the most about Mormonism is the community itself, because it's such a strong culture, strong community, and it's still my culture. It's all I know. It's what I grew up in. I spent years of my life. I spent 2 years on a mission. I spent years in BYU. It's my culture, but I can't pretend like I support or believe some of the stuff that's said over the pulpit. I just don't.
Not that I'm asking you to speak for it, I'm not saying that, but where's
Jim's wife?
In regards to the church, and mostly how's that affecting your relationship? Are you guys on the same page? Are you guys...
Yeah, I won't speak for her beliefs, but I'll always say that she's been very supportive of me. Like, it's not a source of tension for us. It's actually been, I've been really lucky.
Yeah.
Because I know I have friends who haven't been as lucky in terms of going through a faith crisis or losing their belief in God. And it has not gone well for some of them in terms of their relationship with their spouse. But I've been very lucky. Jim's wife, very supportive, and our relationship is more than just Mormonism, so I think we're doing fine.
I think I shared with you before, I spent my time away from the church.
Yeah.
I was fortunate as well. I was patient. And this was prior to the last time you and I had a conversation about this on this topic. Help me do my thing. I needed it. You know, I needed to figure out what I needed to figure out and question what I needed to question. So I certainly appreciate I appreciate the role of a strong supportive spouse in those scenarios.
Yeah, she's been really good. So no complaints.
What about thoughts on, and not as far as timing, I'm not asking about your timing, but intentions is raising children?
We're going to cross that bridge when we get there.
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah.
Figure it out when we need to figure it out.
Yeah. No reason in stressing out about it.
Fair enough. Yeah.
What about you? Why do you believe? Do you believe?
I do.
Yeah.
I really do. And I'm one of those guys, and I shared a similar sentiment to you before. I remember our conversation really clearly. It was powerful then. And I know my experience with the Spirit has been similar but different. Same struggles. Was that mine? Was that the Spirit? Where did that come from? I felt like I saw a direction to do this and then nothing. Like, what was the point of that? I've reached different outcomes as far as I'm still at a point where I'm willing to say there's just stuff I don't understand yet. That I'm willing to go with God knows stuff that I don't know yet, and I'm okay with that. But when I participate, when I commit to participating, not just in the church but in the gospel, I'm happier. I'm a better person for it. I'm a better husband for it. I'm a better father for it. I see evidence. I mean, I just.
And for you, is that that's evidence of the truth claims?
Yeah, it is. When I look at the quorum that I'm surrounded with here in this ward, when I look at the state president I get to mingle with, and I watch those men on TV, men and women on TV who are incredible individuals that I see as solid examples of what I want to be like, and also, I think you use the term kind of just punching above their weight. Just individuals who excel on all fronts, professionally, academically, family-wise, church-wise. I see those results being a function of there's truth behind it. That it drives these men and women to be different than they would be otherwise if the Spirit wasn't actually acting in their lives. If they were just going off of a personal conviction that wasn't really true. I know personal convictions can have a lot of power. Mm-hmm. But I see it as more than that there's actually a Spirit functioning in those individuals' lives.
I don't mean to press you on this.
Feel free.
How do you reconcile that with the fact that, or maybe you don't think it's a fact, but the fact, in my opinion, that other people in other religions are comparably just as compassionate, kind, Christ-like, successful? Does that give credence to their claims? Why is it different for Mormonism?
So, knowing that this sounds conceited, but to answer your question, the way I see it, is they're not.
Okay.
That sounds super conceited. You look at the Senate Judiciary panel that was listening to the Kavanaugh testimonies, 8 individuals making the determination whether to pass this Supreme Court nominee on to the full body Senate. 4 of them are Mormon. So 4 solid active Mormons. In a country where we represent, 1% of the population, you just see Mormons at the center of powerful scenarios all over the place, from Congress from government to private industry, clearly we're not the only ones successful, because there's a whole lot more people in Senate that are not Mormons. But the concentration of success that is generated within the church is way above our 1%. Where you see the CEOs and the founders and entrepreneurs just doing well. And I see that, and then as far as the other church's leadership goes, obviously they have good intentions. I don't think nobody, I would say probably even including the Pope, is out there setting out to trick anybody. I don't see anybody out there really trying to trick people from the major religions. I see sincerity, but I don't see that same level of. I want to be like Ellen Bednar and Ellen Holland more than I want to be like the Cardinals. You know what I'm saying?
So for you, like, blessings equal God's favor. Like, God favors Mormons, therefore it's true, and that's why they're more successful than others in terms of their influence and abilities in business and politics. Like,
I don't think it's God going, hey, I like you better. But I see that as when you're making decisions for your life and for your family, for your business, for your world, for your career path, based on decisions that you're making under the influence of the Holy Ghost, which, as members of the LDS Church, we claim to have constant companionship with the Holy Ghost, that can lead to different outcomes than individuals who have just moments with the Holy Ghost.
okay.
The spirit-driven results, not favors, not preferential, but just living life under the direct influence of the Holy Ghost constantly, I think leads to different outcomes.
Yeah. It sounds like, and I'm not trying to like poke, but I'm gonna poke.
Go, dude, let's just be friends here.
It's like in a friendly way. Like that sounds like the prosperity gospel to me.
What do you mean?
Like, if you're good, you'll get blessings. If you're bad, you won't. And I think Mormonism preaches that. Frankly, DNC 8210. I, the Lord, am bound when you do what I say. When you do not what I say, you have no promise. This land is consecrated for those who worship the Almighty God. If you keep my commands, you'll prosper in the land. Right?
And
that's
not be cut off.
throughout the Book of Mormon.
Right.
It's in the DNC.
That's a really common theme.
And that's commonly referred to as the prosperity gospel. Another book that was influential for me on my mission was Drawing All the Powers of Heaven. You ever read that?
Yeah. What's that? Yeah. I can't come up with that guy's name right now, but yeah, I remember that one.
I forget the author.
Henry. Yeah.
What is the author's name? I don't remember, but it's have a goal in mind. Pray about that goal constantly. Fast in your prayers, covenant with God about your righteous desire, that you'll do such step in order to achieve it. And if you follow these steps, like, God will be bound to bless you if you do it and if you fulfill your side of the bargain. And I fully reject that. I don't think that's true at all. In fact, my favorite scripture, even as a Mormon, as a believing Mormon, I guess I still consider myself Mormon, is something that says the exact opposite, and it's in the Old Testament, in Ecclesiastes, chapter 8, chapter 9. Here it is. 9:11 says, I returned and saw under the sun that the race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, neither yet bread to the wise, nor yet riches to men of understanding, nor yet favor to men of skill, but time and chance happeneth to them all. That's my view. I don't think that there's, even, my opinion is, even if there were a God, even if I believed Mormonism was true, I don't think, like, being righteous or obeying the influence of the Holy Ghost leads to better outcomes. So, anyways, that's my position.
But I don't want it to sound like I think that if you believe this way, then you get nothing but good, right?
I don't think you believe that.
And clearly, there are a lot of fantastic members of the church who don't strike oil.
Right.
Plenty of them. I'm one of them. Right. I feel like I'm all right. Things are good. I can feed my family. But I was destitute. I knew it at 18 years old. 16 years old. I knew I would be a millionaire by 30. Knew it. Yeah, dude, I'm 40. It may happen. It'll happen. But who knows? May not. And I spent last week honestly kind of in a little bit of self-pity mode for a few days. Feeling a feeling of, gosh dang, life sucks. Life is hard.
Life is hard. Yeah.
Both grew up in really crappy families. Her family, I thought I had a really crappy family, then I met her, like, oh, my family's kind of good. I lost my first wife to cancer. She lost her first husband to drug addiction. We get married, and we found out that marriage round 2 was different than marriage round 1 for both of us.
Yeah.
Took a lot of work, a lot of heartache, and that's where I started kind of questioning the gospel, because I was so mad, a lot, just hurt. Anyway, we worked through all that, and then we find out when we start wanting to have kids, we find out it's not going to happen. We had to go through the IVF route. After some heartache, we're able to get Maxwell, and we've been trying to get number 2 here for a while. And last week we got bad news there, and it's just, and I got to the point of, like, where's my break? And then the financial outcomes haven't been, I took a swing at a couple of things that didn't pan out. So Kelly and I spent most of our 10 years of marriage. The first 2 were feeling like we were pretty prosperous. The last 7 have been catching up, just paying stuff off from those swings. And so, honestly, for a couple of days last week, I was like, gosh dang, where's my break? Like, why does it have to be this dang hard? And I'm generally an optimistic guy, right? I don't wallow a lot in self-pity or pessimism. And then I saw in General Conference these men and women who are dealing with hard things in their lives. President Nelson, losing his wife. President Irving right now is taking care of his wife who can't speak anymore. Some like dementia is setting in. So he's full-time in the church, and he's going to work himself to the death on church duties while taking care of, until the end of her life, taking care of his wife. Mm-hmm. President Oaks lost his wife. There's President Nelson's lost a daughter to cancer a handful of years ago. Like, nobody gets out of it without some bruises, some serious freaking bruises. And so, I don't want you to think the prosperity gospel, to me, that sounds a little too simplified for how I feel about it.
That's fair.
It's not do good, you get immediate rewards. That clearly doesn't happen, right? But I just see as a people, including the brethren in our ward, Bishop never struck well financially, but he's just a good freaking dude. And I'm not saying that there's just not good dudes, that this is the only place to find good dudes. I just find them to be more in abundance, different perspectives, different tolerance levels of the crap that happens just because we're in a fallen world. And I see brethren who are able to overcome more easily those challenges because of the Spirit in their lives. What I see is evidence of the constant companionship of the Holy Ghost. Not simplified. Do good things happen. Overall.
I'm just poking because, like, I personally, I don't know if I do think that the church punches above its weight in terms of its political power and business success among its
the individuals of the church or the church?
Of the individuals of the church. And I generally think LDS people are good, salt of the earth people, too. Yeah, certainly.
Clearly, we have plenty of weirdos among us, dude. We both know that.
Oh, yeah. There's no shortage of weirdos.
Yeah. No denying it.
Yeah. But I just don't consider that evidence for the truth claims personally. But
I don't know what else to tie it to.
if you do, like, that's fine. I'm slightly skeptical of a claim that there are more good people in the church, like in terms of the level of concentration. I think that you find.
I'm not good with words, dude. I'm not good with words and anything, but and I don't mean good people like
morally upstanding, kind,
clearly there are plenty of
generous,
good moral people all over the place. With religion and without religion.
Yeah. I just, maybe it's true, maybe it's not. I don't know how to evaluate that. My anecdotal evidence, or my anecdotal, it's not evidence, my anecdotal experiences says that there's really good, really solid, wonderful people in the church. And there are some not so wonderful people in the church too. And there's some really good, really solid, wonderful people out of the church, and some not so as well. I don't know if it's. Anyways, I think I think I get where you're coming from. I think you get my skepticism.
Sure.
I think we're on the same page there.
I completely understand the skepticism, and I know also that if you prove to me that the modern church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, isn't true, I'm done with Christianity. Like, where do I go?
Yeah, I thought that for a long time, actually. I was terrified to lose my faith in the church because I had already been taught to deconstruct every other religion.
Right.
Mormonism does a good job of that.
I really thought it's like, well, I'll have to study on Buddhism, on Hinduism, maybe one of those will work for me. I don't know, because the other Christianity's versions of Christianity are just there's no meat. They're not this like.
I agree. Although, so I'll give you. Here's my view. Like, okay, here's my experience. At least, I felt very similar. Like, I was like, if I ever left the church, I would not be religious at all, and that's actually true. Like, I'm not. But I was scared of that. And then I also thought, like, where am I going with this? So I was scared of losing religion in general and losing that sort of comfort. And it wasn't easy to lose. Like, a faith crisis is not fun. Like, you mentioned that you spent some time doubting. Like, it's an existential. There's a lot of existential dread that comes along with losing your faith. It's not fun. Like, I didn't want to not believe in Mormonism. Like, I wanted to believe. I just couldn't. Like, I can't. Like, I don't like the term "choose to believe." Like, I don't choose to believe that pillow over there is blue. Like, it just is. Like, I can't. Even if I wanted it to be red, like, I would know it's blue. Like, even if I said it was red, like, I know it's blue. Even if I, like, chose that it was red, tried to choose to believe it was red, it's still a blue pillow. Like, I still know that it's blue. Like, I don't like that.
Where did that leave? So clearly,
so I don't think belief is a choice.
Where does that leave room for faith?
What do you mean by that?
You want empirical evidence then?
Well, I'm happy to. I would be happy to say I don't know about something, and then it could be either or, and I could say, no, I could choose this one or this one. I don't really know. Like, I'm happy to make that distinction or make that choice. I think there is choice there when you don't know, when there's not evidence on one side or the other.
Right.
But there's a mountain of evidence against the truth claims of the church, and there's very, very little evidence for. And so I can't. Choosing to believe when there is evidence against that belief, that doesn't make sense. Yeah. And I don't mean to turn this into a bashes church, like on all these evidentiary points. There's a lot out there. Like you said, you know more than the average person. I assume that you've read the LDS.org essays on several of the issues, like multiple first vision accounts and polygamy and polyandry and the Book of Mormon, DNA evidence, and race of the priesthood, the Book of Abraham, which is a whole other can of worms. But like in the face of all of those verifiable things that contradict the truth claims of the church, I can't choose. That's not a choice anymore, in my opinion. So
This feels like a hinge point for you where this isn't an investigation anymore. This is how you intend to
yeah,
live going forward.
I don't. I mean, my view is that after spending years researching and studying and praying and fasting and really trying to make it work, there's very little that could convince me in the face of the evidence against the church and its truth claims. I see very little possibility that it could be true. So I doubt it. I mean, I was talking with a friend who asked, what would it take for me to like what level of evidence would be good evidence, in my opinion. It would be a lot. Like, I don't want to go through the thought experiment because it makes me seem like a jerk. But, anyways.
Are you happy?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happier than I was when I was really struggling with reconciling these things. I was just under a heavy, heavy burden of cognitive dissonance for quite a few years, where I could not reconcile these two competing things that both of them cannot be true on several subjects. And so, yeah, I'm happier. I think I'm happy in general. I've never been like a super jazzy, energetic, outgoing kind of happy guy to begin with. So, I mean, what do you consider happy? I'm content. Like
I want to see you skipping in the parking lot.
I'm at peace with like the belief that this is the only life that I have, and that and I'm at peace that there is no afterlife, in my view. That was very scary for a long time for me. But if you, as I've sat with that thought and had that existential dread, and learned to live for the now and tried to get more pleasure out of what's happening around me and be present. That sounds a little kooky and like hippie-like, but I think that's
mindfulness.
Yeah, that's really helped me come to peace with that whole existential thing that I did have to deal with as my belief faded.
I can see that being really heavy. I'm thinking, okay, you got 80 years, that's your shot. Buy and sell some stocks, enjoy some family time, a little bit of fun and pleasure, and then deal with that 80 years.
Yeah. Well, regardless if I'm right or not, like whatever you believe doesn't change what's actually going to happen, right? So, like, if there is an afterlife, sweet. That'd be great. I would love that. But I just don't think there is. So, we talked a little bit about why you believe. Do you believe, like, in the traditional sort of Mormonism, like, the Book of Mormon is the Word of God? You believe, like, the priesthood was restored by Peter, James, and John placing their hands on Joseph Smith and Oliver Cowdery's heads? Or do you think it's, like, a good way to live? Like, what's your...
Yeah. Clearly I wasn't eyewitness to any of those events. But I don't shy away from saying I know it's true. I'm a little bit more liberal in some of the like Noah getting to every animal on the boat. I don't feel the need to believe that's true, right? That doesn't seem very plausible, right?
Yeah,
I know some people are like stuck on, no, of course you did.
Even when I was a pretty orthodox Mormon, like, I still didn't take many of the Old Testament stories as
right. Job, clearly that's meant to be an allegory. Some people don't know that. Of course that happens like that. Yeah. I don't get stuck on those kinds of things. Adam and Eve, 4,000, 6,000 years ago.
Definitely not.
You're right. Clearly there were humanoids around for a lot longer than that.
Yeah.
How those fit into the plan of salvation and God's family, I don't know. But when it comes to the restoration of the gospel, that Joseph Smith was a flawed man, but played a very important role in God's plan for his children. And the Book of Mormon is the Word of God, and the priesthood that gives us authority to act in His name was restored as He said it was restored. I believe those things.
Yeah. And that's
where I can say, where I feel comfortable. I believe those to the point where I feel comfortable saying I know that they're true, because of my own prayers and my own feelings towards those things. Clearly, I couldn't give you a video recording.
right.
But I know it's kind of been in vogue for the last 5-10 years, maybe more, that I was aware of, where people say, I can't say I know, but I do believe it's true. I spent some time there. I think maybe last time we talked, maybe that's more where I was at. I just see enough, I see it differently. There's the pile of evidence of saying where it's not true is minimal compared to the pile of evidence that is true. What I see there.
How do you... I'm genuinely curious about this. I'm not trying to, like, trap you or anything. I'm really curious. How do you reconcile some of the contradictions that exist?
I mean, certainly, I guess it would depend on which contradiction you're referring to. Like Abraham or the blacks in the priesthood, where those things are just like, ouch, I can't explain that one.
Yeah.
Or Joseph Smith marrying 14-year-old twins while dad's away.
That's on the mission.
Right. Okay, so the last one, Joseph Smith made some mistakes.
Okay, so
clearly made some mistakes.
Your view is like that was wrong.
Some people think that the mother of Jesus, Mary, was no older than 12 or 13 years old. 14 or 15 or 16 might be likely. So I don't know. So then to the other examples of blacks in the priesthood or the Book of Abraham, I'm okay saying I just don't know. That there may have been mistakes. God's ways are higher than thoughts are higher than my thoughts. I'm okay with those elements. I know that for somebody looking to prove by scientific method that doesn't work.
Yeah.
I understand that, but I'm okay with that. I'm okay with those writing those ones off. To me, those feel pretty minimal. Not to minimize.
Even the Book of Abraham, like, we know that the Book of Abraham was not written by Abraham. Like, that's.
But I also
completely verified.
Correct.
And Joseph Smith said it was. So either Joseph Smith was lying or a fraud, or what? I don't know what the other option is.
So we all grew up with that idea that Joseph Smith sat there with the plates and went through word for word. Okay, this is this and that. This is this and that. Right? We all know that's not true, right? Maybe he started that way. But then from there on, he was just looking at a couple stones, looking at the hat, whatever. And
the plates weren't even in the room.
There we go.
And why would God need to preserve the plates?
If you could have done it that way.
If you could have just done it, that makes no sense.
There you go.
Yeah.
To that point, there's schooling there. I think there's schooling that happens.
Yeah, there's the catalyst. The apologist explanation is, after he became
that skill
attuned to the spirit, he didn't even need the plates anymore. But we had to give the plates to him to teach him that.
Okay.
I've heard that explanation.
Yeah, and I can see that being the same thing with papyrus.
That's fine.
I can see the papyrus playing a similar role. Joe's saying, and maybe to the best of even his own understanding, that was the scroll written by Abraham. I mean, he could have been looking at that saying.
So that's the catalyst theory
to giving us what's written in it. And when I read the book of Abraham, dude, there's some solid freaking knowledge there. The creation, the explanations of Genesis, and who we are as children of God. There's good stuff in there. So I wouldn't want to discount. I wouldn't want to rip those pages out of my book. Okay. There's good stuff there. How that came to be, I don't get it. And I feel okay with not getting it. I just see that enough evidence in my life, in others' lives, in the church as a whole, the brethren that those aren't dumb guys. Those aren't dumb guys. They're incredibly smart. Why would they be willing at 6 years old to say, all right, I'm going to spend the next 30 or 40 years making, I think the stipend right now is like 150 grand or something for those apostles.
Yeah, I think they believe. Why wouldn't they if they believed?
They're not dumb dudes. And I'm okay saying, hey, those guys are even smarter than me. Those mortal men are smarter than me. I'm not going for blind faith, that's what I'm saying. But people smarter than me are sticking with
it. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to poke again. But, people smarter than me and you also have left.
Sure.
So,
but I don't see them going on and doing great things and being happy in their lives. I don't see that. I got plenty to do.
How do you make that determination, though? I don't know how you're measuring that. And how you can make that blatant statement that people who leave aren't happy.
That's too blanket. You're right. I look at my siblings. There are 9 of us in my family. 6 of them have left. Mm-hmm. I have his family. There are 8. 1's left, and she's probably the more of all the people I know. She's probably the more has actually succeeded to leave the church alone and just be her own person. She's not random. She's married somebody who had nothing to do with the church. She's got a kid. They joined another church, and she seems genuinely happy. Okay. I've got some of my brothers that seem genuinely content. Uh-huh. But they're all rough. They're all drinkers and smokers and construction guys. And so I don't know really what, are they happy or just is that the booze? I'm not sure. So my experience is limited to those as far as people I know really well that have left.
For instance, the Prime Minister of New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern, she's an ex-Mormon.
Really?
She left the church. She's doing pretty well.
John Huntsman Jr., right?
Yeah. So these are just anecdotes. I don't think you can make that statement in any kind of. I don't see real evidence for one group being happier than the other group in terms of people who stay versus people who leave. I just don't think you can make that statement.
Clearly, I don't know.
You can pick anecdotes, and you can. This is where what I think confirmation bias comes in. This person left the church, and they're doing bad, and then you use that as evidence to confirm that people who leave the church are not happy. And then you know the ones like Jacinda who become prime minister.
Well, John Huntsman Jr., right? His dad is a general authority billionaire. He Jr. obviously did well, but he left the church a long time ago.
Right.
He's now the ambassador to Russia.
Right.
His daughter, I didn't realize who it was. His daughter, who's on that show. Yeah, I didn't realize.
Yeah.
Um,
Another example.
But when I see John Huntsman on TV, I see deadness in his eyes. I don't see a guy who's full of light and joy.
Okay.
And his daughter, beautiful woman, she seemed happy and bubbly on that. I read one article last night. I found out she was more. I haven't seen her on the show.
If you didn't know that he left the church, like, would you be able to recognize that?
I didn't know for sure until like recently, but I've always wondered. Like, he doesn't. So I'm not saying you can always tell, but I wondered about him before because he seemed kind of statements I heard from him to make when he was running for governor or whatever. I think it was governor. Maybe he made a presidential run, didn't he?
Same as Romney in 2008. I think his hat was in the ring.
Okay.
But then he didn't get the nomination.
Yeah. I started wondering at that point. It took me years before I found out, like, yeah, he hadn't had much to do with the church for a long time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think that times you can tell. I see the Romney boys. I'd rather, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's not anecdotes, but I'd rather raise a family like Romney's raised than like Trump's raised.
I think you did one word. Okay, so I think I've got some of your points. Like, and I'm going to summarize, and it's probably reductive, so don't take offense to this. But Book of Abraham, catalyst theory. That's like a well-known apologist explanation for why it doesn't match at all. Book of Mormon, same thing, catalyst theory, is why he didn't use the plates. Race in the priesthood, mistakes were made. We don't know why. Or God's ways are higher than our ways. Polygamy, polyamory, and marrying underage girls, maybe a mistake.
And maybe we just don't freaking know.
Maybe we don't know. Okay. I'm going to give you one other contradiction that I want to see how you reconcile.
Okay.
Just, I tell me if
Clearly, we're not here like
No.
convinced one another.
No, of course not. And I'm appreciative that you're not like combative. And I understand your positions because I held them for a long time. And I've clearly done research on these things. I'm familiar with the arguments. Not the smartest or most well-read person ever, but like I'm familiar with most of these arguments. Okay, so here's a very minor, it's minor, but it's a contradiction. Ether. We read in Ether about the Tower of Babel.
Yeah.
And the Jaredites and them coming across the ocean in their ships that they made. And the story is quite literally, they were spared from the confounding of the languages of the Tower of Babel and so on and so forth. We know the Tower of Babel didn't happen. But the Book of Mormon, for it to be literal and an actual history, which it was claimed to be and has been claimed to be by the church, necessitates that the Tower of Babel did happen. So how do you, there's a contradiction and something that you have to reconcile. How do you do that one?
Alright, so I'm giving that one thought. Pinning it to those ramifications that you're talking about. And you feel solid that the Tower of Babel didn't happen.
Yeah, the Bible gives us a pretty clear, this is when it happened, and linguists have determined without a doubt that there is no way that language
It was all 100%.
was it's given what we know now, it's almost laughable to say that the Tower of Babel is literal.
Even if it happened
there's no
5,000 years ago,
there's no
diverse languages.
There's no serious scholar that would say that the Tower of Babel actually happened. So it's another one of those Old Testament things that you can write off as a symbolic story if you just read it in the Old Testament. But then the Book of Mormon
is a literal
claims that the people that came to this land were driven here from the time of the Tower of Babel. So the Book of Mormon, for it to be a literal account, it necessitates that the Tower of Babel really did happen. So either you have to accept the Tower of Babel as happening, or you have to say the Book of Mormon is inspired scripture, inspired text, but not actually literal, which sort of throws a lot of modern prophets and apostles under the bus, as they've claimed that Lamanites really do exist, and that these people are Lamanites. You served your mission in Brazil, right? Like, you and all the rhetoric. So it's either got to be some inspired text and not and scripture, and it's like a catalyst theory, but it's not literal, or it's made up. Those are your options, in my opinion, unless you believe the Tower of Babel is literal.
So I'm happy to throw in a third option there.
Okay.
And this is me having thinking about this for the first time. I'm okay with the idea of an Adam and Eve and a Garden of Eden.
Okay.
To what extent those people, humanoids before them and around them existed, and are they spiritual children of God or not? I don't know.
Yeah, pre-Adamites, like Bruce R. McConkie claimed, and Bruce R. McConkie shot down pre-Adamites in Mormon doctrine, but we know that lots of things in Mormon doctrine have been shot down. Continue.
So this is a wondering. This isn't the same thing. This is how I see it, but I'd be okay saying that maybe there was a Tower of Babel experience in a limited scope. That was, when they say the whole world.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole world was Europe, right?
Okay.
So maybe there was some type of a literal experience in a limited scope.
Okay. Yeah. That's another. That's an apologist explanation for.
I'm not first to come up with that one.
I'm not sure about the Tower of Babel. I'm not an expert on the Tower of Babel. But in terms of DNA in the Book of Mormon, that is one explanation, apologist explanation, for why we see zero evidence of Middle Eastern DNA among any native populations.
Well, my reading of that essay, the DNA essay, was after that many, they talk about the bottlenecks of genes and just how like, it's not like that stuff is going to pass on for endlessly.
You would if the Americas were populated by Nephites and Lamanites, there would almost certainly be traceable DNA. There are some small possibilities of bottleneck type. I don't know.
Even with all the mass extinctions that happened when the white people showed up.
Yeah. I mean, they all have common ancestors according to the Book of Mormon, right?
Oh, that's another piece.
The Mulekites.
Yeah, I mean, there were other people here when the
Mulekites were here, the descendants of the Jaredites, and the Jaredites were completely wiped out according to the Book of Mormon.
Yeah.
The Mulekites were here, but they were also from the Middle East. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it claims that nobody was here.
I don't think so. There's a Hugh Nibley article where the Jaredites alone, or where the Jaredites the first, or the Nephites alone. It's one of those two publications.
Okay.
And because there's so much, like we a lot of the times they say, like Alan or somebody like that will identify themselves, and I being a Nephite went and talked to these other people, or I call Abinadi, or I called Amulet, him being a Nephite, distinguishing from everybody else that was around that wasn't a Nephite, evidently.
Yeah. Okay. So here's how I will grant you a possibility that there were Middle Easterners who sailed over here and populated the Americas, and then they disappeared in the DNA record, and there has been no evidence of their culture either. I'll grant you that is possible, but the analogy for me is the absence of Japanese DNA in Ireland is also not evidence that the Japanese didn't populate Ireland. Like, you see kind of the ridiculousness of the argument? Like, the absence of evidence is not like a good reason. absent the. So there's an absence of evidence, so you can't rule it out, is kind of the argument for the DNA thing.
But my testimony doesn't hinge on that.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand.
You know, I see the Book of Mormon as a historical record that has an amazing truth taught within it.
Yeah.
The truth that I couldn't give up
Right.
and still be a Christian.
Yeah, and that goes back to sort of what I started with, which is that how do you, like, are feelings a good way to determine what is true and what is not true? And I don't think it is because of the reasons I talked about. But clearly we disagree on that point. That's fine.
Yeah. But I have to. I mean, I have to disagree on that because for me, that's where faith comes in.
Yeah.
Like, it'd be amazing, dude. I would love some freaking hard truth, some hard evidence, right? I mean, that would take up. I mean, my world, my life, my job a whole lot easier. It's not going to happen. But that's. I mean, that goes against the plan of salvation. What we're talking about, that what our point of.
But I think we do have a lot of hard evidence. It just goes the other way. There's no hard evidence on the positive side, and there's tons of hard evidence on the negative side. And you can't argue that there's not.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I have to see that point.
And
you're probably right.
You can still believe, like, okay, I don't. And, like, I'm not trying to, like, insult you in any way. I'm just sort of trying to convey how I've arrived at these conclusions. That, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I am genuinely curious.
About
your faith and how you reconcile these things, because I spent a lot of time trying to reconcile it myself.
You may have spent more time, you may have done deeper research. I feel like I kind of went through a similar process. I'm just willing to leave the space for faith and spirit and feelings being good determining factors. Going up against a scientist who wants some empirical evidence and that would look ridiculous. I get it. I totally get it. I remember when I was on my mission, Elder Scott came to visit, and he visited our mission for a little bit, spent a couple hours with us. His whole lesson was teaching us about recognizing the Spirit and learning from the Spirit. And he made a statement along the lines of, clearly paraphrasing, that I've learned to trust my spiritual eyes more than my physical senses. Like, if you tell me this paper is white, but the Spirit told me it's black, I am going with the knowledge that it's black. And I'm all in. I'm okay with that. So we've got some evidences that come from our temporal fallen world that say religion is hogwash. I get it. But my spiritual eyes tell me it's not. And I'm sticking with that. Like, I'm okay with that. I'm okay going with the spiritual senses that can't be explained, that can't be given hard evidence for. And I feel like on the spiritual, looking at things within the spiritual eyes, within the spiritual mindset, that there's a lot more evidence for the truth of it than against it. I can't share that with you. Right? I can't give that to you.
Yeah, that's the whole, what does salt taste like?
There you go.
Salty.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah. And, yeah, I want to, like, empathize with that point. Like, and I don't want to, like, I don't want to sound arrogant. What I'm trying to say is, I had real spiritual experiences. I felt the Spirit. I felt the burning in my bosom. Like, I definitely bought into the Spirit as a witness for truth. And it was really, really difficult to feel like and confront this idea that maybe it was just me the whole time. And maybe I just wanted it to be true. And you know the conclusion that I came to eventually. But I want to also empathize and say, like, I know what that feels like. And I know that it's highly motivating to have those feelings and those convictions. And so, I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, I don't fault you for believing at all. Like, I've been there. I know what that's like. And I know it's, like, special and sacred to you. Because it was special and sacred to me. But I've come to a different conclusion over time. So, I guess that's all I was trying to communicate.
I appreciate and sincerely your sincerity and your genuineness and being willing to be open and honest with it.
Yeah. I love discussing this stuff. Like, it's fun for me. And I have no problem, like, hearing competing ideas and reacting to them. And I'm glad that you're able to take me poking at things in stride. That's refreshing. So thanks for being cool with that.
Yeah, no, for sure. Not gonna offend me. I feel like I let the real me come out very, very often, and I feel like very many people know me very well. I just have a little more in-depth conversations than I've had with most of the guys in the quorum. I think I come across a little Peter Priestley sometimes.
I don't think that.
I hope not.
I always thought of you as like a more like permissive Mormon, not in like a bad way, but in like a hey, kind of relaxed kind of way. Like it's not that big of a deal if someone swears every once in a while.
Right. I've gone through stages where I felt like that, where I held myself to that kind of standard. You can't, dude. Every once in a while, you gotta just let something rip. Otherwise, you'd go crazy.
Yeah. So I never thought that. So
all right. Well,
I didn't get that impression personally.
Cool. Good. I need to wear like a purple shirt every once in a while just to give some evidence.
I still wear a white shirt every time I come to church.
Yeah. I notice. I
saw the order of things. What Kate Packers talk.
Elder Holland has one about white shirts as well. Yeah.
Oh, that's so stupid. I'm sorry, but like, what a pedantic and like legalistic view of what's important and what God would care about. Anyways,
I see you. Did you watch any conference?
Yeah.
So you heard that we're going down to 2 hours, and
my mom is stoked.
Is she?
Yeah.
I think most of us are.
Yeah.
But it was giving us a whole lot of teaching on you got to step up. Like I've seen this. I've been expressing this for the last 6 months, and now it's just I feel like I'm just getting proven right. I finished my mission right before they did the Preach My Gospel, and I was home for a year or so when they launched that. I was like, what the heck? This is never gonna work. You can't trust missionaries. Like in my head, like what are those missionaries gonna do without like preset discussions? But now those missionaries are elders, quorum presidents, and bishops. And then they took away home teaching lessons, and then they took away visiting teaching lessons first, and then they took away home teaching. go by the Spirit, and now they're taking away church, giving us more of that. You got to do this on your own. You've got
home-centered, church-supported.
There you
How
go.
many times did they say that in that session? Like 50?
a lot.
Yeah.
Because it's like we've had those crutches for generations, and those crutches probably weren't doing us a whole lot of good. So now get rid of the crutches, and what are you going to do after church? So you've got an extra hour. Are you going to go to the Formula One race, or are you going to go home and do some indexing? People are going to be making those choices.
Well, sorry, keep going.
Yeah, I'm just seeing that kind of those Law of Moses stuff. I don't know if the white shirt thing's ever going to go away, but those kind of just more small hand-holding, here's how you do it, here's how you're supposed to act, kind of things are they're going.
Yeah.
Between you and your wife, between you and your companion, use the Spirit and make your own decisions.
It reminds me, there's sort of interesting historical thing that happened in the church in 1984, I think. There was a 70 named Ronald Pullman who gave a talk at General Conference. And it was all about how, like, the church is just a vehicle. And the real, it only serves the purpose of making you a better person and, like, helping you become Christ-like. But it's just a vehicle. It's not like this necessary thing that you must conform to, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And he gave this talk in General Conference, and I think that the church is sort of trying to be like that now. But at the time, do you know what happened?
What?
They made him re-record his talk in the tabernacle with a cough track in the background, and it completely flipped the message.
And they put that in the recordings, in the video and the audio recordings.
You can find the original still online, but like the church at the time was very like correlation and top down, and the church, the institution, like loyalty to the institution kind of thing. And they made him basically turn the whole meaning of the talk around. It's really fascinating to read both talks, the original and the one after
the approved version.
The approved version. Go check it out. I think it personally. So my view, obviously, is that the church is like man-made, and the guys that run it are just a bunch of guys. They're smart, they're well-intentioned, but I don't believe they're influenced by any divine spirit or anything. And I see that modifications that the church is making as trying to mainstream the church. Like, it's becoming more mainstream Christianity, and I think that's what they're trying to do. Like, the church is sort of getting away from the things that made Mormons unique and weird in the 1800s, in the 1900s, and it's becoming more of a mainstream Christian church. That's what I think is happening. I mean, they literally shortened church now, changing from home teaching to ministering. Ministering is like more of a Christian word. Like,
well, I mean, President Nelson acknowledges that. The idea came from the idea of having personal ministries.
Yeah.
The Christians talk about all the time.
You don't hear anything about becoming godlike anymore. Like, that was like a King Follett style stuff was like what made Mormonism unique, and like now it's almost disavowed. I think it's becoming more. It's just trying to be more and more mainstream and fit in more and more, in my opinion. Now, there are a few things where, you know, I would like them to fit in more with the world. Like, I think the treatment and rhetoric around LGBT people is just horrific and mean-spirited. I'm not a fan of that. But anyways, that's my take on it.
I've wondered on that one. I mean, I felt like I had a good relationship. I see, like, the church, like, the state of Utah is coming out with, like, the most progressive protect religion as well as homosexual rights kind of compromise bills that exist. The church is donating a ton of money to LGBTQ resources, depression, and then I see the Twitter reaction to President Oak's talk on Sunday was, "That's the worst thing that ever. I can't believe that guy's still talking like that." And all he's doing is talking about the family proclamation. Like,
he basically called anyone who's gay under the influence of Satan. Like, he literally said that. So, you
can't
can't
literally say that. He's saying, like,
let's read it. Let's see. Is the text up yet?
Yeah, they're up.
Yeah, text. Here it is. Let's see. Tell jokes. Treat them with land.
Like, they single him out like as if he's cruel and unique or something.
Oh, I don't think it's unique. I think the church has been very consistent on this topic for a long time.
Right.
I think they're wrong, and I think it's mean. So, yeah, I mean, he does the thing where he talks about spiritual truth versus scientific truth at the beginning, which is apropos to our discussion here. Where's it going?
Gender is eternal. I mean, that's part of
Yeah,
our belief.
I mean, gender is eternal. Okay, so anyone who thinks gender is a construct and they don't feel like they're male when they're in a male body, they could take offense to that if they hear that, because then they look at themselves and it invalidates them, right? They're like, oh, I'm broken, right? Like that's the view from their perspective. So I can see how someone who's transgender would take offense to that. That's pretty soft, though, saying gender is eternal.
Yeah, I don't see that, like, the heart. I get your point. Somebody who disagrees with that and thinks that's an opinion, that wouldn't sit well. But he's not saying, we hate you, like you're worthless, or that you're less than. We support traditional marriage.
Yeah. I mean, here's where he says, opposition is part of the plan, and Satan's most strenuous opposition is directed at whatever is most important to God's plan. He seeks to destroy God's work. His prime methods are to discredit the Savior, his divine authority, discourage repentance, counterfeit revelation, contradict individual accountability. He also seeks to confuse gender, to distort marriage, to discourage childbearing. So right there, he's saying, if you're transgender,
You're confused.
If you're transgender, you're not confused. You are confused, but you're not just confused. It's because you're under the influence of Satan. Like, Satan's most strenuous opposition is directed at blah, 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 blah. Then he says, distort marriage. So if you support gay marriage, or if you're gay, then you're under the influence of Satan. And if you think that homosexuality is not a choice, which even the church says that now, although they didn't 20 years ago, what are you supposed to do? There's no place for you in the church.
I think that'd be the hardest element, the hardest condition possible.
Yeah.
To be authentically gay and
yeah.
trying to figure out where you fit in this plan. It's not like this church.
I think it's sad, in my opinion. It's really sad.
But those are mortal conditions. And when mortality is such a small slice of the eternal existence, I think there's a whole lot of room post-mortal experience to get the answers and figure out the whys and why. Because clearly, there are very effeminate men, there are very masculine women. I've seen male cats rape male cats. Clearly, something working as planned.
Yeah. Oh. Imagine for a second that, I'm straight. I think you're straight, pretty sure, given that you're married with a child. And it's hard for me to comprehend being gay. It's hard for me to comprehend that, because I am the way that I am. And I'm straight. Imagine for a second that, heterosexuality was, on the flip side. And you were told that your heterosexuality and you're attracted to women, and that's because you're under the influence of Satan. That would weigh on my mind constantly. I could not change myself.
But he's not saying that attraction is coming from Satan. I mean, there are physiological things in play there. And I think, to your point, the church is logical. There are physiological things.
The church no longer says that the attraction is from Satan. They used to, but they've stopped.
And they were behind the electric shocks treatments.
Yeah, they've changed their position, but they're still saying that, like,
if you act on those
marriage
things,
is from Satan.
supporting that kind of marriage.
And they're still saying that being transgender is influenced by Satan.
I have a hard time understanding being transgender than I do
So do I.
homosexuality.
I do too. I think it's just less. It's been less in the public conversation. It's not been in the public conversation for as long as homosexuality. But yeah, anyways, for me, the social stuff is, while disconcerting in my opinion and not right in my opinion, it's not what sort of led me to not believe. Anyways.
Yeah, I understand it. I don't know how else the church can do it, because we don't expect.
Well,
I don't expect. Once we lose the physical bodies and those physiological aspects, when we get back to just being pure spirit plus immortal, perfected bodies, there's not going to be homosexual gods, right? We believe in eternal progression towards godhood,
right,
and eternal progress meaning bearing children, bearing spiritual
and
children.
Elder Oaks says as much. He says earlier in the talk.
So same-gender relationships don't exist in this plan of the we believe that
it's completely anathema to all of LDS doctrine.
So I don't know how to do it any different. Like we're going to be nice, we're going to be good neighbors. Well, we don't want you guys. We don't want you to be depressed. We don't. I think
that's the whole point. Is that the doctrine itself does not allow for homosexuality whatsoever.
Right. Acting, and the way we put it now is acting on homosexuality.
Yeah. So here, Elder Oaks puts it this way. Anyone who understands these eternal truths can understand why we members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints think as we do and do as we do. That's exactly what you just said. Like, if you understand the plan of salvation as taught currently, then your point is totally valid. The church is backed into a corner on this issue. And when I say backed into a corner, I mean, they can't change because the doctrine will not let them change.
Right.
I don't know what's going to happen in the future. The church has changed its doctrine before.
But
the priesthood,
and that's the biggest one I can think of in the marriage.
So lots of people point to those as here's 2 points where we did change on these major social issues, and they extrapolate it and they say that means we're going to change on this one.
But those are not even nearly as closely tied to eternal plan of salvation type principles.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I agree. I agree on that point. Sure, I think, the whole plan of salvation is to become like God and have an eternal progression and an eternal posterity. Right? That's
which takes specific energies to make that happen.
Yeah.
And I don't know what gestation of spirit children like. Is there a womb period? Is there birth?
Although, I think if you took an 1800s member of the church and talked to them about race, they would have just as hard of a time considering the fact that race is not important.
There's all those teachings about blacks were less valiant in the pre-existence.
Right, and that they're going to be servants in the celestial kingdom if they're valiant. And Jane Manning James was sealed to Joseph Smith as his eternal slave, or his eternal servant. And then in 1978, they decided, after the blacks received the priesthood, they changed the ordinance, and now she's legit or whatever. But I don't right now, we can't see the church possibly moving on this issue. I'm not so sure. I think there's precedent. I think they could do it. I don't know if they will, but I think they could. And it wouldn't surprise me if in our lifetimes the church accepts at least gay marriage, not in the temple, but they'll accept people that are homosexuals married legally as legitimate, but I doubt that they'll get to the ceiling. I don't see that happening.
That would be just be such an alteration of doctrine that's currently taught.
Right.
That would feel like a very different church. You know,
Totally.
different. Like,
How do you think it felt in 1978?
when a lot of people bailed at that point because they couldn't accept it.
Yeah. I don't think it's much different. And I mean, look at how late it happened. Like the civil rights movement was like late 50s, early 60s, and eventually the church came around 20 years later. Gay marriage right now is what the civil rights movement was in 1960. In 20 years, are we going to see the church?
NPR, it's like NPR is generally like what I listen to when I drive around. It's like all gay all the time. It baffles me. Like for a small percentage of the population as homosexuals are in America, every hour there's a human interest story.
Yeah.
With a gay angle.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's like all the time.
I think personally that it's one of the sort of moral issues of our day. Like, how do we treat gay people, and what rights do we extend them, and what? So, sure, it's a small portion of the population, but that's kind of the whole point of like laws is to protect the minority.
Sure.
Right? I don't know.
I think we made some very appropriate long strides in that regard.
Sure.
I mean, when we were kids, dude, you played. I remember talks in junior high and high school.
Yeah.
Where I was like,
It was super common to call people
Totally.
when I was in high school.
Totally.
I did
I
it.
remember I was in like 10th grade when East High in Salt Lake got a gay club, and that was like, whoa, like, wow, they're going down. That's second coming has got to be close because
Right.
it was a big deal.
The second coming is always right around the corner, man, in case you haven't noticed. read stuff from the church published right before 1890.
Oh, they were calling
They thought it was 1890.
really?
Yeah. That's why the church was in so much debt. Because they thought the second coming was going to happen.
So spend.
And then it didn't. That's why the manifesto on polygamy was issued, because they thought it wouldn't matter because Jesus was coming. I don't
you sure
know.
about that one?
You probably don't buy it, but it plays a factor.
Wow. Yeah, I hadn't heard about that one.
Yeah.
Like it was the end.
Yeah. They thought it was the end. Many of them. No, I'm not saying like it was preached like widely, but it was a thing.
Another one I wondered about as well is where, because there was a lot of confusion in the beginning of whether you could ordain blacks as a priest or not.
Yeah.
And then there was this era, like mid 1800s. There was a boxer, Joe Johnson. The PBS did a documentary. Same guy that same guy that did a lot of those famous PBS documentaries. Ken Burns. He did one on him. It's called Unforgivable Blackness.
Oh.
And he was incredibly good, and they couldn't beat him. And the whites were doing anything they could to find anybody to take the head of the white tail back, because it was such an embarrassment for the white race. And I've heard people talk about like maybe that had some kind of influence on where the rule became more firm about not ordaining blacks to the priesthood. Where
I don't know.
some ties to some of the political.
I mean, I know that in Nauvoo, like Joseph's time,
it wasn't uncommon.
Well,
Elijah Abel was an ordained elder out there preaching.
yeah, there were like 2 black elders, I think. Elijah Abel's the famous one.
Right.
Brigham was certainly more racist than Joseph,
Right.
like way more. But Joseph was no like activist for African Americans. Like, he was, if you read his statements, like, they're still pretty racist. Not as racist as Brigham, but, he was a little more progressive than some, but, like, he's not in any way, shape, or form, like...
New England abolitionist.
No, he was not in any way, shape, or form saying that black people were equal to white people. No, not even close. But, like, he was a little more egalitarian. But Brigham was real racist. Like, slavery was okay in Utah when they got here, or here when they went to the Salt Lake Valley. There were slaves, black slaves, for a while. So, and Brigham openly taught. I mean, you've probably read some of his racist quotes. They're pretty bad.
Yeah.
And then
And that's where it feels like that mistake kind of started locking in.
I don't know. I mean, I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
I don't. I personally, like, I just can't reconcile, like, so one rationale for polygamy was, God needed to, like, test his people, right? I've heard that before as a rationale for polygamy. And Joseph didn't want to do it. Like, this is the argument. Joseph was totally against polygamy. And he was so against it that the Lord had to send an angel with a flaming sword to command him to do it, or else he would be destroyed. And this was a test of everyone's faith, including Joseph. And it was a test of the people's faith because it was, against all their morals, all their Victorian ideals. Like, this was something that would be completely, it was a complete sacrifice of it was a yielding of everything to God in terms of how they thought about what was right and good. Why couldn't the test have been treat black people well? Why did it have to be like something that turns out to be pretty crappy in retrospect? Like, treating black people well was just as, like, ridiculous a thing to do in the early 1800s as was marrying multiple women and underage girls. I mean,
but would have been 100 years later would have been seen as heroic and progressive,
rather than backwards and perverted. I always I thought about that a lot, like 5 years ago. Man, I wish I would have done that instead.
We'd be heroes now.
Yeah. It just seems so absurd to me that, like, God would send an angel with a flaming sword to command the practice of polygamy, but would be utterly silent on issues of race until 1978. Come on, give me a break. I can't reconcile that. That's hard for me.
Yeah. I hear you. Have you heard about the new book, church history book that the church put out?
The Saints book? Yeah.
Yeah, you looked at that at all?
I haven't read it, but I know about it.
Clearly they bring all the subjects up. Mm-hmm. They don't, they hadn't really gotten to the race one yet because it's not the timeline that they're covering.
Right, it's early stuff right now. The multiple accounts of the first vision is in there.
Yeah, they talk about that. They talk about the polygamy, but they don't give all the, they treat it softly. They don't give you all, they don't talk about the 14-year-old girls or whatever.
Right. Yeah, I mean, as expected, you
But I did like
it a source. Yeah.
I did like it.
Have you read the whole thing already?
Mm-hmm.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and there's some good stuff. A lot of the stuff was most of it I like kind of the advancement they're making, and got some of the additional details. But there's some parts that I didn't know anything about. Mm-hmm. And part of what was interesting was that conversation of polygamy within Nauvoo. How hard it was for some of the people to accept.
Yeah.
Like Hiram. Hiram was at that point Joseph Smith's first counselor.
Well, it totally schismed the church. Like, right. William Law.
Yeah, I mean,
that's why the printing press was destroyed, is because he printed stuff about polygamy.
But having having Hiram against it, who was a member of the first presidency.
Yeah.
But the 12, like Heber Kimball and Brigham, nobody was eager, right? They all had to kind of have a little trial, their little faith crisis, essentially, to get through it. But the 12 was more accepting of it than the first presidency was.
Oh, really?
And so there's some interesting exchanges between Brigham and Hiram.
Yeah,
to get Brigham helping Hiram get through it.
Interesting. Yeah. I didn't know that.
Yeah, that was the first time.
What? Give me one other thing that was like you didn't know, and you were like, "Oh, that's weird," or "That's interesting," or "I have never heard that before."
no real big big topics. I read a lot about the other papers in the nearby area that led to Joseph, like the kind of kindling of the hatred against the Mormons there in Illinois. The paper out of Warsaw, Illinois, which is like 10 miles south. The editor of that was a guy named Thomas Sharp, and I knew he was part of there was like 6 or 8 guys that were put on trial for the murder of Joseph and Hiram. He was one of them. But they all got acquitted. But it sounds like he was like instrumental in like charging up the stairs and firing shots, which I didn't know. But when the Saints first started sitting on Nauvoo, and he came to Warsaw pretty close at the same time, and they're actually pretty close buddies at the beginning. Like he attended a few parades with Joseph, and Joseph was kind of showing him a good time and hanging out with him. And then somewhere in there was some kind of conflict that turned him sharply against.
Like Joseph tried to marry his wife or something. I'm just kidding.
I didn't realize there was ever a friendly time between Thomas Sharp and the Mormons.
Okay. Kind of like John C. Bennett. Like
yes.
He's like the quintessential anti-Mormon, right? But he was like buddies with Joseph for a long time.
He was I think they made him the mayor of Nauvoo when he first showed up. Like, you got all these great ideas, come on in. Totally. They talk a lot about him in that book.
Spiritual wifery.
Yes. Yep. He was going around and selling people on that idea, selling ladies on that idea.
Yeah. The rabbit hole never ends. Start going down it never ends.
And here's the thing. I put myself in it for a while. And at this point, I'm just not that interested in it. Because I've made my choice to say I am okay with the spiritual side and the spiritual aspects of it. And I'm going to seek the things that confirm my bias. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. Because I get so much good out of the church, and what I see with my spiritual eyes is more important to me than some new aspect of the rabbit hole I might not have known anything about before.
Yeah.
So
I understand that.
Coming over tonight, dude, literally, I'm not kidding. I've been thinking of this conversation for a long time. I see it as a function of my priesthood keys that I hold as Eldritch Quorum president. Then everybody's their own agent. You're responsible for yourself, but I have stewardship for you. And I felt kind of as a mandate. This is my job as the Eldritch Quorum president to come over here and to have this conversation. I wondered what's the invite? What's the purpose? Like what's the end game here? My only invite to you, I'm not going to go commitment pattern on you and ask you for a yes or no, but it's just to not. The invitation is to consider engaging, to not fully close it off. I think if you wanted to, you could make some work that would take you back to seeing things more with the spiritual eyes again. I think your spiritual eyes are closed. I don't know, that sounds too definitive. I don't mean that. It's an invitation to try and see the spiritual side of the evidence again, which would take reading the Book of Mormon as a historical work of Scripture, opening the possibility to there's truth behind it, and just seeing where it takes you. Seeing what, if there comes a time, maybe perhaps decades down the road, where you feel the ability to believe again, but just to not close it off entirely. We would love it if you re-engage with us in this forum at this time. That door is always open. I mean, the church, the ward, the quorum can always use a guy like you with your talents and skills and heart and work ethic. And there are plenty of things you can do without a testimony. There's always chapels to be cleaned and people that need rides and moves that need to be done, whatever. But any level that you can engage in now, as well as more deeply spiritually going forward, that just invite you to consider it. See if there's more engagement that would work with where you're currently at, and perhaps even be able to maybe at least further engagement. That's the best invitation I've got for you.
Okay. Well, I appreciate, and I know your intentions are really good, so I appreciate that.
It comes from a place of sincerity and
Yeah.
truly caring about you, if not love.
I don't doubt that at all. So I appreciate that. Thanks.
My belief is that it would do good for you, and the belief in the gospel would lead to good things for you and your family. And so I don't feel hesitant in saying, if you re-engage, blessings will come, one form or another. And again, not ease, but that it can be good for your family.
Well, I appreciate, and I know that comes from a good place, and that you're well-intentioned. So I appreciate that. I don't believe, and I don't think that. I guess at the risk of sounding totally closed off, like you said, I reject the thought that that re-engaging would be helpful. I just don't think it would. But like I said, I'm open to believe. I would need some sort of reason to believe, and I don't see any at this point. So, but I certainly have not closed the door on anything. I've never closed the door. I'm Bayesian. Have you ever heard of that term?
What was it?
Bayesian.
Uh-huh.
Bayesian. He's a famous statistician.
Okay.
Basically says, there's a probability for something. Like, for instance, it might rain tomorrow. There's some probability that it will rain tomorrow. A priori, so before tomorrow, before I see what actually happens, I can have some belief of what that probability is, right? Like, maybe, for instance, it rains 100 days out of the year. So, my probability, a priori, that it will rain tomorrow is a 1 in 365 day chance, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like a little less than a third.
Right.
Not a third. Let's call it a third. So that's like my null hypothesis. There's a 1/3 probability that it's going to rain. Now, I look out the window and I see some really dark clouds. What does that do to my probability?
I presume it increases it.
It increases it. I've got some evidence that I didn't have before, and now the probability that it's going to rain tomorrow is higher. That's like the Bayesian view, is that you have a hypothesis about what is true or what is or whatever, or what is going to happen, and you update that hypothesis as you get new information. That's how everybody acts, generally, right? We do this naturally.
Right.
And what I'm saying is, I'm open to evidence updating my hypothesis. I'm open to believing. I think it would take a lot.
Like the tribes marching down, 10 tribes marching down from the north.
Yeah, coming out of the center of the earth.
Polar
Those
or
sort of
something.
ridiculous theories. Yeah, I mean, it would take, like, if aliens came to Earth and they were human, like they were created also in God's image, right? But on a different planet. That'd be pretty good evidence for God.
Right.
Because
there's some consistency
I
there.
have no reason to believe that life evolved on other planets the way it evolved here. So if human beings, came to Earth from a different planet, that'd be like pretty solid evidence.
Right.
Hey, there might be something to this man is created in God's image thing. because there's other people. And if they came to Earth and they were like, hey, we've got this Christianity thing, and it's a lot like Mormonism, and we've come here to merge the Mormon church with our church, that would be pretty good evidence. I could get on board with that.
I think that'd be an easy sell.
Yeah. But, I've made my position. I think there's just so much contrary evidence that I don't think that, in my opinion, there's no place for faith when there's so much contrary evidence, in my opinion. So, but I'm open.
Okay, just stay open.
And like I said, I fully and sincerely appreciate that you care, and I know it comes from a good place.
I appreciate that. I'm glad that you think that and sense that. And I'm not over here just because I feel like I have to be or should be or whatever. I care. I think about you guys. I like you guys. I do care about you, whether it's a church connection or not.
Yeah.
I don't know. Outside of something crazy like that, there's not going to be another. There's no article I can send you. There's no scripture that's going to send you. No conference talk that's going to be helpful to this conversation.
It would be hard to find something that I haven't considered already.
Right. So
I mean, I'm not trying to sound arrogant, but
just be open to the idea that some of the stuff that's going on in your life, the happenings, and where you live and where you work and who you're married to and what you do for work and who you run into during the day aren't coincidences. So there's actually some workings of the Spirit in your life. Just I invite you to leave that as a possibility. That it's not just physics. There's a little more to it than just physics and chance theory.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Yeah. Anyway, I appreciate you having come over and being cool about it and honest and genuine.
Yeah, of course. I have no problem discussing these things. No one really seems to want to, but I'm happy to talk about it with anybody they want to. So
I don't know how we do. We don't have very much chat time at church. So and by and large, most people are not that social. They're just trying to do things with their own families or whatever. So I literally have gone on this conversation with you for 6 months, but I've been a little nervous. I'm not sure how to approach it and whatnot, but or if I could ignore the idea. I would love to ignore the idea, but I think maybe I don't know what my point is there, other than just maybe there's more willingness than might be obvious because.
Well, it's hard, right? Because people don't know where you stand, and it's a sensitive subject. Lots of people are really angry when they leave the church, and people don't know if I am angry or if I've even left or where I stand. There's probably rumors flying around, so I get it. And lots of people just don't even want to confront the idea. They don't even want to think about the possibility that the church might not be true, and they don't want to talk to someone. I get that. It's a hard subject to approach, but
I think there's a lot of simpleness in any religion. There's blaming every good thing on Jesus, every bad thing on the devil, and Jesus up there in the clouds. Yeah, I think there's plenty of that. There's out there deeper thinkers than that as well, but they may not want to engage on that topics.
It's just such a personal thing, right?
Totally. And just the nature of our war. I think if you went in there to our old Quorum today, you might recognize 5 faces. Mm-hmm. It's so the only people that I've ever had any conversations with you about you with. Because we're in the presidency together, so we're talking about ministry assignments and whatnot. Do we give an assignment or not, or do we? And it's probably not.
I might be more destructive to people's faith than constructive.
So I don't know about any rumors. Maybe there's some stuff on the women's side that I don't know about. But,
I don't know either.
I know people like you guys. People love. All the primary ladies.
Mm-hmm.
seemed to be fond of her.
Well, cool. I don't want to keep you
Yeah.
forever.
But early tonight, she had like a migraine or something, so
Okay.
I was free to kind of take up
Okay.
all this time. But I appreciate you. I'll give you your night back.
Thanks for coming over.
Yeah, appreciate this. It's good talking.
Yeah.
Hey, that was great. All right, listeners, don't forget to go to our website and vote for this essay, provide some feedback. And if you've got something you want to say and you can squeeze it in before the end of November, record your own listener essay, send it to us, we'll post it. Come support us on Patreon. And as always, thanks for listening to Infants on Thrones.
Hi, this is Hillary.
Matthew, Ryan,
Carol,
Keith.
Ashley, and I like to play bingo online while listening to Infants on Thrones.
You can comment on this episode on the website, infantsonthrones.com.
If you really like what you hear, give the Quorum a 5-star rating and write a short review on iTunes.
I did. Anyone for the closing prayer?
Thank you for listening to Infants on Thrones.
Oh, yeah, and one final thing. Just because I've been getting more of these essays than I planned on, it's going to stretch into early December. So maybe December 1st, December 2nd will be our last listener essay. You can vote for any or all of these. So I don't want anybody to be, I don't want anybody to be confused and think that you only have to vote for your favorite one. Now, when you go and vote, you can rank it as anywhere from 1 to 5, how much you like it, and vote for as many of these as you want to. It's the quantity of people that vote and the scores that they give that are going to determine the final winner. So don't feel like you have only one vote to say. You can vote for every single one of these essays and provide feedback to the authors for every single one of these essays. I know they would love to hear what you think because they did this to share it with you. So please go to the websites for the essays that you like and that you want to vote for and do that. And we're going to be doing this for the next little while because I'm still getting essays coming in. But I'll stop it. We won't go further than the first week of December. And this, like everything else, is a canned message. So if you've heard this before and you don't want to hear it again, maybe I should have told that before. Anyway, blah, blah, blah.
Thank you for
Blah.